and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am. Hello there, everyone, beloved Ascension pioneers and you students of all life in creation. Welcome to this free course of mine, which will be on the Ascension Yoga and the path of the Tantrika. So I wish to first tell you a bit about this journey and how recently the unfolding of the events led me towards this course, what actually led me to it. This is actually a preparatory free course for the 10th level of the self-mastery journey, which I have been planning into for quite a while now. As you know, and perhaps some of you who've taken these courses, I have created the first few 1 to 7 levels of mastery courses, which actually explore the realm of our inner soul mastery. So these are the levels of our inner self to master. Then recently, I actually created then further on the 8th and the 9th level. The 8th is the level of the oversoul consciousness, the group consciousness, and coming into the enlightened partnership. And then the 9th level was just recently published by me. This is the level of mastering solar consciousness and understanding what solar consciousness is. So unlike anything else, this is a sharing, an offering that is meant to make mastery more practical. You can see that introductory video that I made on my self-mastery courses. And my whole desire, the mission behind this was to make this as most comprehensible and understandable to people who perhaps don't have the terminology of the ancient scriptures, the Vedic teachings, all of that from the ancient past, because everything is getting very simplified in our ascension. The knowledge that's based within the wide light of unity, in terms, it can be perceived very simply. So that was my initial desire, to make things simple, to synthesize them in a form that could be accessible to people from all walks of life. So after I finished the 9th level, and as you know, every level is meant to be not just understood, applied through as a devotee of spirit and the conscious path of our ascension, but also through the experiential journey of how we allow these changes to naturally metamorphosize us, because this rebirthing of our consciousness, which is not based on life and death, but life and constant expansion, so constant rebirth. Basically, the evolutionary spiral of consciousness goes like this, right? With a constantly bigger and bigger span, right? So if I drew it like this, I don't want to draw over my board, but this is how it looks like. So it's a spiral of spirit that's like expanding. If you look at the nature of our galaxy, look at the nature that's explicably explained, and it's engraved in the pattern of our own galaxy. So it's spherical and yet it's cyclical, and yet it's an elliptical spiral. It goes like this and expand outwardly. So I want to now say that for those of you who've taken these first courses, and the 8th and 9th are more advanced levels, the 10th one now will be about this path of inner union on all these levels, that we're able to become as co-creators with life. So I've made a few videos on the path of Tantrika, what it is, just a little touch base on that. So consider this video as a free preparation stage if you're really called to go even deeper, because I'm now working with the mastery journey of this profound understanding of yoga, as in the mastery of all these levels, not just the yoga of our physical body, but yes, also the yoga of our physical body, the yoga of our sacred sexual fire, the yoga of the heart, devotional yoga of selfless service, all of these different levels that, many yogis describe, like bhakti yoga, Ashtanga yoga, all of these different, right? These are all branches within one domain, which is what I call the yoga of all life. The Tantrika, the understanding of yoga as in the pathway to constant expansion journey and eventually ascension. So before I go into today's free video course, which again, like I said, it serves as a preparatory stage because now I'm going to be in the levels of exploring and integrating that knowledge so I can share it with you in this 10th advanced level course. So take the primary courses before you do that, because they're all kind of meant as, you know, as stepping stones towards the journey of our self-realization and completion and our wholeness. So as I'm going to be doing now, I'm going to be sharing more, and consider that course in that way. But before I start, I wish to tell you a bit about how that recently and that set of events that led me towards this guidance happened for me. Just one day I was looking at these oracle cards from across my bed, and I instantly was guided. I didn't use them for a while. These are keepers of the light. And I took the cards in my hands and I was kind of shuffling them. Sometimes I just play with them. And I asked myself, I said, okay, so then who's my guide in this moment? And I didn't even look at the cards, I was just shuffling. And immediately this knowing comes, and there's instant word in my mind that goes Babaji. And I'm like, yeah, right. I was laughing at myself and I said, who, right? What Baba? Yeah. Because I really love this master, but I never considered that in a way to be influential in what I share. But then all of a sudden I take the cards, I turn the one around, you know, I usually pull them up like this, you know, just like, and then the first one that's left underneath. And what came out was Mahavatar Babaji. And as you know, Mahavatar means great avatar. And its message is soul expansion. And your consciousness is expanding. You understand the connections between all things. And he was coming up for quite a while. And then I did understand how the knowing was so instant and so complete. And then the spirit said, well, it's always like this, right? I always had this, because I remember when I first got these oracles, I pulled two main cards for myself, and one of them was him, and the other one is Sanat Kumara. And these sacred beings, they're actually all a part of one family of luminescent ones. But we here as humans, people don't have the understanding of all of that. So during today's video, I won't just talk about the nature of the Tantrika. What does it mean? What is this path of complete unified yoga? I call it the journey of Ascension yoga. You can call it grace yoga, illumination yoga, unified yoga. This is the yoga that moves you towards unity. This is not just you doing physical exercises. This is the yogic path that is a path of constant devotion. That the training of the mind, training of the body, the training of your feeling state of life, training of your spiritual understanding, so that eventually all these aspects are not separate, but that you practice the devotional yoga, which is a yoga of union, the unity yoga. So Sanat Kumara Mahavatar Babaji, thank you for making your presence known here today. So I would like to move into today's free course after this short introduction that I made for all of you. So, okay, let's go back to the roots. If you've seen my videos on the Tantrika and explaining what it means, some of you might pronounce it Tantrika. I mean, that's a that's a bit of a trickster for me. But anyway, I want to say now that this level, which I'm calling the 10th level of our mastery, and when I say levels, they're in a way, they're seen as colors of the rainbow. They're interconnected, they're interlayered within each other within this domain of spirit, which is a spherical domain. And yet they have boundaries between them, which are crossed through sacred initiations. They're like doorways of our consciousness. When we expand to a certain level, then a new doorway opens. And yet they're also subtle lines. So it's not like, okay, how do I know I finished this and then I move on to this level? It's more like all of these levels are always working in synergy within us, because that's the pathway of unity and union yoga. What I want to say is that the main thing, the basic of understanding the Tantrika and the Tantrika path, which is the path of complete self creation, that you become your own creation, you become as you were initially created, and yet your own creation of the divine, works with the free universal energy of creation, so that you can harness, work with it in complete purity to generate life in its purest state, right? So I began here with the simple drawing of the triangle, which I always call the sacred pillars of all life in creation, and how, sorry about that, how all life is coming into form, right? So this sacred holy trinity, in many different scriptures, it's known under many different names, right? And you might ask yourself, well, how does this relate to the term Tantrika and Union Yoga and Ascension Yoga? Well, it's all the same thing, because to really be unified, right? is to be able to generate life within the domain of spirit. To access spirit, we have to understand the basic principles of creation, and I've talked about that several times before. So the nature of the Trinity is implied in all the sacred original teachings, not the distorted, manipulated ones. And it is actually so simple that we even have it in our basic tarot, the understanding of tarot, because the first three primaries, which are the 0, 1, and 2, the 0 being the full archetype, right, the child, that which is the unknown, the mystery of all life, the 1, which is the magician, which is the sacred alchemy, that which creates the source. It creates through all the elements. How? We don't know. None of us has all of the knowledge. How? It's just being done. How do planets come into being? How does the synthesis of elements produce something we call, wow, this is a star? How is this made, right? So this is that alchemy. And many times it's called El. It can also be called alchemy, alchemist, the great alchemist. So 2, we have then the high priestess, that sacred feminine, the oracle, that which sees life into being, that first initial prototype. So from all these 3, the first primaries, then all the other aspects in creation, all the other foundations, all the archetypes are set into being. Because many people don't understand things like that. And I have here a book written from Marshall Govindan. This is about the great master Babaji, who apparently none of us has the complete knowledge of when he was a physical being, if ever, how, we don't know. But according to many mystics in the ancient yogic traditions, he was incarnate, but during a very young age, at 16, he already became, supreme, enlightened version of himself, which in the Vedic tradition, or the Hindus, they actually call this, they call it becoming, right? Becoming that as the Shiva itself, the Shiva being the names of the supreme God. That's how they call it. But here in the teachings that I share, which for me, they're not really teachings, these are the foundation pillars of all life in creation. We're not going to really work so much with these templates, right? But I want to say that I took this book with me after receiving that oracle a few days ago. And I just said, okay, Babaji, I'm going to give you some time. You can sit with me in my space. And I read the foreword, and I didn't go deeper than that. I simply wanted to be with myself, present in nature, because I like to receive my knowledge directly from my presence. And as this was going on, and the other day, I wake up, I had a few lingering questions on the deathless state, because this book is basically on those that achieve the deathless state, which is not the same as the state of longevity, which is prolonging your life, but being really in a state of not dying, transcending death, and becoming the ascended one. And I had some lingering questions, and after that, I took this book again with me to come in my sacred space, but I wasn't guided to open it and read it. I simply put it there, sat in a yogic position, in my full lotus, and I simply sat with it. And I said, please, I want to receive directly from you, because the day before, I invited the master in my space, and I said, well, we're now working as a team, so show me this is true, yeah, guide me. And the thing is, a few times later that day, I saw B initials, right, everywhere, like in TV, there was this thing, and in commercial, I was like, okay, that's funny, it was just the letter B. So it's kind of getting my attention to the letter B. So this was a confirmation, because I asked for a sign for the master to really be present. And I don't like to use the word master so much. I like the word Mahavatar, which means great avatar, which is simply the one who has merged his consciousness with the universal consciousness. And I want to read something. I did a few underlinings here before I start today, which I really love. I love this writing here that says, many teachers, this is in the preface, many teachers can provide the practical techniques for spiritual growth, but few have the wisdom and depth to uncover and surgically remove the subtle ego attachments of their students. So when you move into the nature of understanding what a great sovereign being truly is simply one who dedicates their life, their presence, from whatever kind of state of being to the selfless service. But in this video today, I want to go deeper into that which I was pondering on, into not just this, what I will share, this will be a combined synthesis of what was coming through me, but also the understanding of why we here now, as Ascension pioneers, as those who come as volunteer souls, as many of people who are now moving with the light of Ascension, why are we the way we are? What's different? What has changed now in this period? Because as I've been writing here, and this is a very important thing, this is the knowledge I received today, I was shown that even the masters now and their wisdom and what they were actually accessing through their either incarnations or their path of devotion when they were in a certain form of physicality that is beyond just this divine radiant state. And they do describe these three different states of the ascending process. One is, I'm going to read it here from what I've been writing down so that I don't say anything wrong, because these things that I don't say myself, I don't wish to say it the wrong way, so people don't accuse me. These stages of alchemy, first is the perfect body of love, and this does deal with these different aspects of embodiment. The second is the celestial body of grace, and the third is the invisible body of bliss to merge with the God Supreme, that force of all life. Yeah, so what I was shown is that even the masters, as they were actually each self being of the self, individualized self, sovereign aspect, and yet what they were, if you imagine, they're tapping into, right, this world of matter. They're jumping in their own timeline and their own mission, and we're perhaps wondering, okay, this book is not just about the master, but also those who've had an experience with him, or more familiar yogis of the more modern times, such as Paramahansa Yogananda and such. And then also the 18 what are called the Siddha, the Kriya Yoga, after the Kriya Yoga tradition, which are those who have achieved these states, and each had their own contributions. Why? Because I was shown again this, you see here, what I've been drawing? It's like this line, right? And we see the expansion of creation, like I said, moving and like this, expanding further and further out. So here, this spot in a certain, let's say there was a certain time frame on Earth, and we'd say, okay, this is the lowest of the density of the human form that was experienced, that someone can have and experience. The densest, here in this book, it's called the gross matter, can be experienced, and you could call this the most dense. But this was actually the highest potential here, you know, as this further out expansion took place. And this, the highest aspect, the purest one, could be called the divine ultimate. That was that ultimate potential. So as each were jumping in their timelines, they had these assignments, they had these missions, that direct embodiments of what we call the Godhead state, that state of consciousness directly tuning into creating the seals of creation itself. So what that means is they each had to bring a specific contribution. We don't always see it as a whole, but it is a whole. So today, as I was just sitting with the book and the presence of the being of the Great One, instead of reading the books, the words from the mortal man, we all are in that certain regard. But I wanted to just be with the presence. And I was shown that basically even the masters themselves are a part of the greater council that I always share to you about. I call it the Great White Brotherhood, the Lumen Ones. And even though it might appear, well, this one had these attributes and serves this ray and this dedication, and they're mostly dedicated to this and that one is more into this and this and that, but they're all divine in each of these aspects separately. And yet, you can see that as divine aspects, all the divine virtues that were coming in through these different timelines. We call them, well, this is the great deity, or this is the great incarnation, well, this is Krishna, well, this is the only God. But in truth, the divinity itself was coming into form to give it a boost in that particular timeline, in that particular creation space, to set the pathway for the ultimate. And when all of these seeds would be planted, it's like the Christed of the Christ, it's like of the whole, that's when we can really talk about the unity consciousness, that unified field, and the illumination of all the lumen ones. It is always accessible, it's always available. So when I talk about the path of Tantrika, it comes from that unified self. It does not only come from that, okay, this is me in this body, I'm developing this type of awareness for myself. And then I read this book and I say, I don't get this. Why were they doing it this way? Why were they trying to move out of their body? Why were they trying to achieve this state? We have to find the understanding that each part of that source, which is on a divine assignment, a divine mission, carries within it the seed of creation that knows where it's moving, that knows where to go, how to go, and why. It is it's preconceived, if I can use that word. That means that where we are now, we are all in a way in this new age participating with the energy that's coming in now. But this was also preceded, it was preconceived. And that is why we can't understand when we look at this, like subparticles, we say, I can't understand the path of this guy, or some of the teachers or those who are described as initiates at that time. What's important for us is to understand the self-realization of the self and the self-realization of the group, but we will never be able to fully see, what each aspect is meant to do, because that aspect only knows their own mission within the Christed seed. So there is such a thing that I call the unification of the individualized self-realized aspects of the God self as the individual avatars, if we can call it like that. And they were not only individuals, really. They were all part of this greater self. And each aspect and contribution to the whole was a continuation within the unified consciousness field, within that universal consciousness. And when they were able to attain that state, to merge with that unified field as well, the particle and the wave, they actually achieved that state, that blissed state. So if perhaps one of them experienced the state for them was this expansion was at its finest, it's cultivated in that life, it simply means they did that part, they self-realized to the degree and the extent of what they meant to do as that aspect of source coming into matter. But where we are now, our ascension process is changing. We have many of these again, siddhas, if I can pronounce it that way, I don't know, perhaps not the right way, but they were seeking that pathway of moving out of their body, to carrying their body with them so that none of the physicality would remain. As we talk about now in our modern times, what is ascension really about? The true ascension is the metamorphosis of your vibrations so that in the end your physicality goes with the changes you've experienced first. That's the consciousness shift. But that is a process. But what's happening now is that just as before these were experiments on earth, they were also carrying out for the whole, doing these experiments of how much light they can attain, how much they can be informed and hold that love before they're no longer physical. But now what's happening, we're not just ascending as each being separately, but we're also undergoing this whole planetary ascension that actually is more of a process for us now, because we're taking our bodies with us, but in a different way, right? We're actually integrating that light to be able to hold more of that light before we can't even attain the body anymore, right? So this state depends on so many levels. You might say, well, it's all about the food. It's all about what you eat. It is about that, and yet it's not all about that. This is not a black and white path. So if you say, well, these guys were practicing this through yogas, it's all about Kriya yoga or these techniques. Yes and no at the same time, because our ascension has always been happening multidimensionally. And just as these aspects were the individual aspects, they also existed within the whole. And the whole of life is constantly expanding. That's what I'm trying to get at here. So now these avatar expressions, these essences are unifying. And they were not meant for gods alone. We'd say, well, the gods, this is for the world of gods. No, they were also and each a gift to humanity, different aspects of the whole as the direct descendants and direct incarnates. And of course, their initiates and disciples. I think, we say, okay, this one was initiated by that and that disciple. But in truth, there was like a lineage was created for that framework to be carried out in a particular era, perhaps. So it says here, I wish to read you this short paragraph, that the history of the Siddha tradition begins millions of years ago with the story of Lord Shiva's initiation of his consort or Shakti Parvati Devi into Kriya Kundalini pranayama, the scientific art of mastering the breath, in a huge cave at Amarnath in the Kashmir Himalayas. So what this really talks about is that all, right? All is rooted back into that ancient primordial source that kept creating disciples. These disciples were the direct descendants of the light, of the understanding. So they were given these things to kind of, overextend to fellow humans, to brothers and sisters. But as a natural part of duality here on earth as well, this was also the opposing force to that primary initiative, was also that which didn't always work in that favor. So because of that, there was also, and we're still experiencing now in a huge way, there was also a lot of what I call, here, I don't know what I'm writing for, the illusions and hoaxes created within. So there was many distortions of that. And we have in our modern tradition many gurus or even yogis who say, I am the direct incarnation of this person or that being. And many of them are saying these things to get specific followers, to get specific disciples, but their intentions aren't always pure. The direct descendants, usually they're not needing to use those words. They're not needing to say that. They're simply being initiated through that spirit, that first descending force, as they're going through these initiations. But I wish to expose before we move deeper, because I'm bringing you a little bit of the background before we move into the laws of creation, that there's a bit of distortion now happening on our planet because these hidden feminine aspects in creation are often there in the background. So we see these pictures always presenting this master. We say, well, these are the yogis, right? Well, each yogi or each master in the behind the scenes, not really, it's an equal equation, has the divine feminine, that sacred feminine next to it. So the ultimate divine masculine has that ultimate divine feminine as their chalice, right? And together they represent those two triangles merging. And that sacred feminine and masculine, so the masculine were the yogis and the feminines were the tantrikas. That's why I talk about the tantrika here. And I am the woman. I am the embodiment of the aspect of creation. So as these masters, I say it like this because they truly were merely pure embodiments of that spirit in form. And they each lasted here in this plane of duality in such a gross body, like it's explained here, until they were meant to. They did not need to exist any longer. Their initiation had to be for their purpose. So these hidden aspects, in truth, they're equals. So we might see those scenes of Mary Magdalene, Jesus sitting together, Krishna or Radha, Shiva and Shakti Parvati Devi, Babaji and Mataji. So why is this sometimes so hidden? Because the life-giving essence, which is that sacred feminine, the chalice, and when you read the books or anything like that, is just all the like this about master and little like this. Oh, and there was also this, his sister sitting there next to him, and yeah, that's it. And she's the luminescent one. But there's not so much talk about it. Why? That's an interesting question, right? And that's, I feel, the meaning of me bringing you this entry into the course of the Tantrika, because now I feel when all these aspects, when this primary setting for this stage can come to a certain completion and to a certain culmination, for us to understand these principles, that which was hidden can arise again, right? So that the giver of life, because it says here, he was initiated by the Shiva by the Shakti Parvati Devi. So it takes both of them. In truth, like I said, all life in the physical keeps progressing and refining in form, and that which many call the great avatars or the direct incarnates, the descendants of the Godhead, are just pillars of creation to reflect the highest potential and archetype in that current state of existence and level of consciousness. So I showed you just drawing, right? The densest, and here you would say, well, this is the highest at this time. Like we had with Joshua, Jesus the Christ, known to us. At that time, he was the ultimate on earth, but that kept on expanding. This is how it is. The embodiment is expanding. The frequency of our earth is expanding. So now what happened is that enough of these, right? Enough of these frameworks were set into motion that the seeds were planted. Now, this greater process can unfold, which is ascension, not needing to disappear in form, but the upliftment of form into a higher level, so that we can still experience what it means to be in this existence. We don't really return to the God as we stop existing. We simply achieve this state where we also can become these, like these masters are described here, in deathless form, in eternal life kind of form. It's because we're now going through a metamorphosis within our physical ascension that's different, because we're going through it this time, and yet it's not different because the rules of creation always apply the same way. So what is a tantrika? A tantrika, I've explained to you before, is a being that is fully unified within their divine triad: divine masculine, feminine, and divine child, mother, father, and child. This is, and it means, because all these, right, come out, all these aspects, but they're not separate. They unify, right? They create, almost like they create within you a greater triad. So that's how the expansion goes. So there's equal reciprocity and meaning in reference to the other. And that's why I'm explaining this, because in these scriptures, when you see both of them sitting together, but they're not always seen as equals, that's where many of the misinterpretations are coming from. Okay, so these are some of the archetypes and the storylines behind this. And I want to also say that with the accessing of this, where we're going to go with this free course and in the 10th level mastery course, is that this is actually about the knowledge of how we can connect to universal limitless energy flow and cultivate our sacred breath of the life force to create within the domain of our unified self that exists beyond the laws of polarity. So that with the rising of this force, the constant life giving, we can exist beyond the confined realms of time and space and connect to our infinite expansion self, the immortal self that bypasses the physical laws of life and death. And then I started reading about this and the deathless state after I wrote this, replacing them with the life and constant rebirth, expansion, template of the unity self, the program of unrestricted consciousness that is fully liberated, and therefore because of that you can fully, constantly create and recreate. And this path can not only be accessed through knowledge, it's a mystical, mysterious path. Even when we say the word yoga, everyone watching this or, tuning into something, when they hear yoga, would probably think about something else. Someone would simply think, oh, yoga, these are this few exercises, people are doing, perhaps. But we need to allow this greater understanding of what this is to come with us moment per moment. The core emphasis on this, also on what the Tantrika is that it shows us how we can be in form and yet be unlimited, how we can be unrestricted also in form. Because when we say, wow, right, each of them transcended this form so they could become as God itself. But that's the level where everything descends into, right? But now imagine ascending life forms into a pure crystalline form. You can still call it life, and yet you are able to maintain a level of mastery where the inner masters and directs the outer, not the other way around. With most of the people here now, living human beings, it's the appearance of that the external governs them, that the external kind of implies the laws of what they're going to feel. So the external propulsions, the external conditions and mechanisms will imply how we're feeling. Well, the path of the Tantrika is that divine triad which you continuously maintain from within. Now, the first thing I wish to move into, we've done these archetypes in the first primaries, are these levels of the human body. They're described here in this book. This is just for the basic understanding. There's many different layers between. But there is the physical, the feeling, which is the vital body, the mental body, the intellectual body, and the spiritual body. And if you want to read more, it's all in the book or online. There's a lot of this information online. When we talk about our human nature, we also talk about our first 3 lower bodies, or the first 4. Depends on what you're taking into account. But everything here in this true path of a tantrika is about the unification, even the unification, right, of all of these into a one unified radiant being of the bliss light. Everything, when we start walking this path, will start, getting a different meaning to us. So perhaps if we on a certain level said, wow, this is sexuality, because we've read somewhere that sexual life force is the creative life force within the universe. But we have the mentality that translates this to the degree that we perceive sexuality a certain way. On a higher level, the word sexuality wouldn't even apply as in terms of what we call it as such. It loses that meaning. It's completely different. So there's like phases of a different development within us that starts to arise the more we start devoting to this path. And we move from this sexuality to this sacred sexuality and then transcendental sexuality, where we actually replace the personal tantra into a unified yantra. You know the yantra? Of that mandala. It's one of the most famous archetypes. And that means that it's almost like the same as saying it's when our physical breath meets the unified breath of spirit. So, in a way, yoga at its highest level could be seen as the mastering alchemy of harmonizing with the breath of life, with harmonizing with the breath of spirit. And there are certain transcendental laws which they do teach here with these postures and hand motions, like mudras and breath work, and they combine all because each aspect is related to a certain aspect of our beingness. But the most important, again, is the synthesis. It's the synthesis. For most humans, where we are in our current template of embodiment, we first need to start understanding what our body is. And this will be the main part of my course, this 10th level. What I was shown is I was even asking to receive this directive of starting to understand our body more. Why? Is because we are going to use our bodies in a new way. So if you look at the bodies, okay, this is the human body, these are the functions, these are the organs, the organisms, this is how it functions. But there's also a higher, the homo-luminous body, which perhaps we don't know anything about or we know very little of because it's changing. So these kind of things, that's going to be the main emphasis of this course, because when you are in the heart of the tantric self, you are as unified with the creation of all life. You are as one with the spirit of creation, and yet you feel you are still in this form. You still have this experience of yourself as this particle within the greater wave. So within this, and this is what I've written, is the divine chemistry, right, which is the sacred alchemy, is the Tantra yoga and Kundalini yoga of the internal realms that meets the Tantric unification with all. So like I said, when your breath, when your life is the same meaning, it unifies with all life, is even what I was shared today by this little guy. I'm kidding. Recognize, right? That even the masters are not seen as masters or separate. Everything is a part of a much larger picture in creation, which is evolving and expanding like this. Okay, so here now things will move into a higher sphere of understanding, and our beingness and the way we create, that's going to start changing. How we relate to ourselves, our bodies, it's going to change. In terms it will get different terms will get different meanings, like I've explained to you here, right? Um, so you will start using your life force in a different way. The first thing, what I was shown today, is that there's many of us, many of you who perhaps began or initiated a little bit, pieces by pieces, these certain sacred pathways. And you said, okay, I want to devote to this path. And for so long, it feels like you've been gathering information from different sources. And you've been kind of wanting to walk the talk, but you were like piling up. But now what's really essential and what still stands between us and really, becoming the embodiments of this is that we don't do the work. There's people who don't do the work. They will constantly either totally become a part of the negating of the self, the negation of life, complete fear-based consciousness, or they will over-externalize and they will start worshiping something outside of them. Let's see someone who sees someone in a more self-realized state that they are. They say, wow, you're so much like this. Wow. They will start worshiping how life force is flowing through them instead of working on themselves, starting to understand themselves as, the pillar, as their own being, as their own creation self, and getting aligned with that, and that they can be completely sovereign and free and the co-creator with the divine. That often happens. So because of that, we have these beings who say, well, I'm your guru, I'm going to show you these little tricks, and we do little things and you believe me. There's so much of that. And just recently I've watched this great documentary. It's back from the 70s, I think, and it's called The Guru Busters. And it shows a group of rationalists who are exposing these tricks in order to really help the humans to gain back their power because of the lack of a certain awareness of perhaps basic laws of how our human body works, of chemistry, how these experiments can be created, even with magician tricks like that. And it's great because if people want to worship something, or or believe in the sorcery in that way, or believe in something which is blind faith, instead of working their own magic, starting to be self-creative, gaining that awareness back, they will lose their power. They will give their power to someone who has the power. But a true sovereign being, a true enlightened being, would never say, you see, I am your guru and I have these powers and these magic tricks, so you should be my followers and you should prove your faith by doing these little tricks. They do these nasty things sometimes, because there's such a huge lack of awareness. A true being of light will show you, will if you're only willing, they will share, their knowledge, their understanding with you, just as I'm sharing now with you these things that we can all have access to because we're all coming from the same source. So we're going to have to start expanding and really doing the work. And that first step is realizing the value of our sacredness, of our purity, of our sacred space. For years and years, in my own example, I have tried to do certain things that were perhaps more human. So I could, do some human things, that I could do a little bit of that. And recently, there's this new wave coming in me that is simply saying, no, not for you. And even though my human part would still go, oh, but I would love to do this or that, there's a greater understanding of why I'm so hypersensitive, or why I can go in these large numbers, people or groups, and why I can get sick from that is because now there's so much coming out that is impure. All of these imbalances, all of impurities, such sickness and disease is coming out to the surface with this great purging. And the era we're living in now, everything that was hidden, all the lies, or all the manipulations with people and the war for their consciousness, so much so that we are needing now, when we step into this path, this is the path now I talk about this when I say the 10th level initiation. And currently I'm going through this myself, and this is why I'm dedicating my studies to that, my initiation to that, is because I know if I want this, I need to devote myself to it. And I do that myself internally. I never had teachers in my life, and Spirit always told me I didn't need it because of my own capability as a spirit. But this is something I set up for myself. But I did choose certain challengers and initiations that will set me onto that path. But it's becoming more important to know now that this level requires complete dedication, complete devotion to our life force, because there's such um, a huge, how can I say this, a high degree of those that wish to feed off of another's life force. Wow, hard thing to swallow, but it's how it is. Sometimes they're doing it consciously, not always intentionally or consciously. Sometimes there's entities that are not even physical that leech onto those that are not yet sovereign beings, that are still weak in their awareness. They don't know. And they kind of like work and manipulate energy through them because they don't know yet how to manipulate their own energy. And when I say manipulate, I mean energetic management. So the first thing is the understanding of the sacredness of our physical space, of our own sacred space. It takes great wisdom, it takes great observation and keen integrity for you to see and discern what is what. Because even when people come to you, they don't always come with good intentions, sometimes even ill intentions. Like if I read emails, I'm going to have to filter through them. There's many of them that are beautiful and loving and pure, and I feel the frequency, and there's some of them that go from here, from what I say, this ultimate potential to the densest of the form. And I have to filter through my own awareness through this higher discerning filter because of this respect for the devotion to my sacred space and knowing that my energy will not be harnessed by someone else. So I have to filter my responses through what I see and observe. And it takes sometimes a lot of practice because we've all been deceived before. Sometimes we're so used to being kind and polite. We say, well, a being who's enlightened is always kind and generous and like this. No, not at all. You are a kind being. Your kindness is an essence. It's not the way you respond. Perhaps if someone is constantly using you and manipulating you, you're constantly doing like this, they will say, okay, I can do anything, and they keep exploiting you. You have to know that it takes great wisdom for you to act from that mature state of applying your responses and filtering them through, what you're receiving from the external conditions. Because again, remember, the internal is the master of the external. It should never be the other way around, or our energy can be harnessed. So what this means is that in order for us to really value our sacred space, we will have to give up some of the things that are really low in vibration, that are not honoring of who we are, that are not really expressing that highest, greatest truth and potential for our ascension. Let's say someone might be nice to you on the surface, but they don't have that value for you. They don't see you through the reverence of the contribution that you have for the greater good and the greater whole. So they're still fragmented and they're not within unity consciousness. In a way, a part of them wants you to stick with them, and it keeps pulling you back. So although we say, well, we're unified, we're one, that doesn't mean that we are allowing our energy to go to that which doesn't pay us the homage. Which means it's kind of coming through the disrespectful filter of the ego. That's the first thing, getting the right discernment, devoting to our life force 1 in 1100, I could say, percent. Understanding the value of our purity, maintaining our purity. Because only through the devotion to that purity, our life force will not come through these numerous filters, because the moment it does, it's already losing its power. So you get this infinite amount of the supply of that free universal energy of creation, but once it comes into your physical vessel with all those, right, those filters, everything you give your energy away to, attachments, codependency, all, energy management that's poor in its nature, you get like this tiny little grain of sand energy. That's happening for the most. But the path of the tantric is that eventually, as we receive, so much we can embody. I know that's a very high vision and ideal, but it's coming that step way through step way. And a lot of the people, it's even, I've read it somewhere, that a lot of the people, they get books like that, or they tend to greater devotions, and because their own reality does not reflect what they read about, wow, the life and death of, or not even death of this being, they get infatuated for a while, but they never do the inner work. Eventually they close the book, put it somewhere in the corner. Their life never reflects that. That's the thing. It's a difference in being overly infatuated. Oh my gosh, I wish my life was like that. I put it down and go at a party. I don't think about my energy. I never devote to greater laws of understanding my physical body, the physiology of my body, the chemistry, the biology of my body. These are all components of my unified body. And I never give them enough credit and understanding, because people would say, wow, it all has to be just faith. No, it's also science. It's both as one. All aspects of source exist. There's science and there's spirituality. They have the same root. It's just a perspective, right? One observes more the external conditions and what's happening, what's the result of that spirit, of that creation, what is that which creates that. But they're actually intermingled as one. Okay, so now let's go back to that primordial understanding of why it is so important for us. The first part is that dedication. Through that dedication, you purify yourself enough for your sacred fire to keep on rising to the degree that you are not just having a peak experience in one moment, but you can attain that. You're slowly more and more integrating that consciousness attainment. What that means is you're learning personal energy mastery and management, and that's going to be the main emphasis of the course, of the mastery course that's I'm going to work on now. And with that will come the understanding of recognition through the illusion and hoaxes. I'm going to tell you my recent experience. I saw this Ascension video. It's just, one of those videos that has only pictures, and, you never see the actual person who's behind it. There's a lot of people who are hiding themselves behind these pictures and words. They never show themselves. There's some people who use that kind of work, but, you can also see them. There's a picture or something. And there's people who are hiding behind a bunch of knowledge, but you never really know where it's coming from, who made that, what's it about. And then I listened a little bit about that, what they had to share. And there was a few steps. I don't know how many steps towards ascension. This is how it is. This is how it happens. And as that final step, this is the video I found. It found me somehow by divine synchronicity. It was shared that if you want to speed up the ascension process, this and that is what you have to do. And there was this program, and you have to eat that way, you have to do that way, you have to do the forgiveness work that way, and this is how you do. But it was almost like this instrumental approach. It's like you're in this exercising modality that it's like for the speeding up of your natural ascension process, right? And then I was like, oh, I'm fine. But then at the end, the person or the author said, I was trying to get the greater knowledge about this and give it out and publish it in my upcoming book, but I'm running out of time, and this is costing actually thousands and thousands of dollars for me to produce. And there was almost like, okay, now it's like now I'm getting a little funky here. And all of a sudden, the person was saying the print can cost $1,000. Then these things I want to show you through pictures cost also again thousands of dollars, and editing in this, and I don't have this money, so I ask you, blah blah blah. And there was the story. Okay, first clue was like, why are we still thinking in terms of us, our ascension? It's a goal, right? No one talks about love. No one talks about the expansion of your consciousness and moving with this universal force. So there's just like this exercising training program like you have to do in the fitness studio, and that's how you're going to utilize it. And if you follow that program, and if you pay perhaps $1,000 for it, you might get it. No, sorry to disappoint you, but this is not how it works. The second thing is that if anywhere in any of these teachings, the love component, this unifying with this becoming as love itself, because remember, I've talked about this here as it's from the book, these three stages: the perfect body of love, the celestial body of grace, and the invisible body of bliss. These are stages. So the first one is the body of love. So what do we have to do? What do we have to do? We have to embody that sacred vessel, becoming the sacred vessel of love. It's not just about health and fitness routine, doing these exercises, doing the energy and visualization work, and drinking some, I don't know, smoothies until we get to being fed only by a solar light. Yes, again, here you have this writing. I think it's in the beginning. I'm not sure I'm going to find it now. But it says that all these great beings were teaching that you cannot kill or eat another living being and ascend. There is no way. You have to stop doing that. And a lot of people still ignore that because they're accessing the mental levels of ascension that does not counterbalance itself with the compassion levels and understanding all life force. So how can you become the embodiment of life if you are still participating in anything that feeds the concept of death? You cannot enter the deathless state by being in the program of death in any way, and the lack of compassion. So the thing is, yes, that is so majorly important. The nourishment, getting from certain type of solid food slowly as a progress, is that progression into eating more liquids and eventually being sustained through the solar liquid light. Yes, but it's not something you pay thousands of dollars for, and it's not something you get by this manual and do it in 2 months and you sped it up, and you speed it up and that's it. It's not how that happens. What's happening is that our bodies, because we're being fused with Earth's ascension at this time, are going through this with a very compassionate form. And a lot of us now, as we're moving into this new energetic dynamics, into this new space, we're adjusting to that. Because why we want to be, held in this form. And this is my last part. I'm going to talk about this as Ascension Yoga for Ascension pioneers and the volunteer souls, is we need to be here. We need to be in our bodies because we came here with specific assignments to assist humanity, to be as bridges of that gateway. And your soul knows exactly how to utilize that. Your soul does not speed itself up and say, you do this program and you're going to get out. You're going to be out of this dimension and into the new one. The dimensions are not excluded from each other anyway. I mean, you can be in the third dimension, but your density will be higher. Of course, you are lifting your frequency, and that will denote everything in your life. But as volunteer souls, we have taken on specific assignments, and we vowed to being temporarily, I don't know, for our missions, but we vowed to be in these bodies and to, through our own progression and our own evolution through the body, show that as a mirror image to our brothers and sisters how it's done. Because there's a lot of these masters and sages that no one actually, they were almost like the experiments. They were these direct incarnates of how the energy can be directly coming into form and directly, moving out of the form, becoming its own radiant, bliss body, radiant body of bliss. But what we're here for is show the pathway of that compassionate evolution for creation, for life itself, not just the source component. Remember, the Tantric path teaches the path of divine trinity. And just as we have, and again, that equal, right? Equal from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, and internally, right? Interconnected. So what this means is that we were specifically designed and destined to embody particular frequency resonant, just enough held in this space to be as physical as humanity needs us to be. That was the vow. It's not that we are less than those who can perhaps, go away, stage magicians or so. I'm just kidding, But I want to say that it's very important for us to not doubt all the experiments that were happening before, all the great beings and yogis and avatars, and knowing their rightful time and space, but to not compare. And to not compare our own missions, and to have a greater understanding what's happening with the planet now, what's happening with Ascension at large, and where are we? What is our own self-realization about? Because that is the only pathway that will really get us to our own self-realized state, meets that universal consciousness. You can't meet it through another. Like I said, I will never understand or know the embodiment or the purpose of perhaps Babaji. It's not my intention. It's not even the meaning. It doesn't have any meaning. So if we reflect a little bit on that, remember just how important it is to value your sacred space, to know what you're devoting to learn integrity and sovereignty and discernment, so you will be able to witness what is the illusion, what are the hoaxes, what are some of the templates presented through duality rather than a unified consciousness. In the unity consciousness, all masters, which are not really called masters at all, but great beings of light, work as one. None of our contributions are different or seen less than. So I want to show you, you have this scheme here. There's different beings here. And then you have their who initiated them, their place, their disciples, and their contributions. So I was focusing on these contributions, and again, as I was reading them, I got this instant unifying vision, like, wow, all these aspects are equally important. So we might say, well, the medicine is not important because it only heals certain things in the physical body, like plant medicine, certain plants, and so, right? It's all about working with the light. And then we think about, is that really true? Because just today in this, as I was watching this guru busting documentary, they presented this case with this healer, right? She was just saying certain things in mantras or whatever. And they say, well, if you have a psychosomatic disease, which is basically mental, that might work on you because it changes your belief, and all of a sudden, wow, it doesn't work anymore. But what about those that really have something going on physically, that's really already has physical symptoms, and it's completely manifested on a physical level? And at that time, you really need to tend to the body. And that is the importance, in that case, of certain medicinal practices. So you see, everything that we needed to know about the human body, biologically, chemically, psychologically, yes, psychologically, but also physiologically. Certain words are hard for me to pronounce. I excuse myself. But all these aspects make up for the whole of the human DNA makeup that was created on this level. And that's the understanding of the human body. And my initiative and intention for the course is to show this transition from the understanding of our bodies and how we work, and then our new homoluminous bodies. Because the Tantrika is all about the art of refining your alchemy in the body by understanding yourself as the greater unified being. And all of these levels, we've went through these levels of different bodies. And you can see yourself here like this structures of the onion, right? You can't. But let's say your consciousness only goes up to this level here, right? And you say, well, I'm this, right? I'm this expanded avatar. Many people say that. But if someone, if that was a camera that could record how much you expanded your energy, shows you only went up to here. You know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but that's as far as you were able to move your consciousness, you know, and those great beings were able to expand far out. And when you can do so, that it's not a linear thing because it's like this. So it basically comes back into itself like this, right? And that's what it means to be whole into yourself. It's not just an expression. It's not just a new age term. You are literally whole into yourself. You are fed through that free flow of universal consciousness. So without further ado, I think I will end it here. This was our free course, the announcement for the 10th level mastery course that's now in the making and in its process, in its divine timing when it's ripe. Do stay tuned to all my videos because every single one of them has a little bit of the, understanding that moves on to a new level. They're all like serving as these stepping stones. Like I say, I don't always use any fancy terminology, but I want to make this applicable to the people who are just as common as anyone else. We're people from all walks of life. And why I'm using English is because it's mostly widespread language, although it's not my native language, as you know, probably. So forgive me for all the mistakes. I love you all so very much. I hope you enjoyed this free course, that you had fun. And don't forget, there is a free courses playlist now on my YouTube channel. You can find it there. There's other free courses that I presented with my whiteboard that's not so white once I paint or draw all over it, that I doodle a little bit of infinity symbol here for you as a gift. I love you so much. Again, it was an honor to share a little bit of the expanded understanding that I received, and understand that you can yourself receive directly from source. This path is about nothing standing in between you and that essence of the great avatar, which is, in truth, it's all avatars joined as one. It's in synergy. So becoming self-sufficient, androgynous, fully benevolent, pure, selfless, service-oriented being of light, that is the main directive in devotion. And if you like these videos and if you want to sponsor me, you can do that on either my donation page or become a Patreon sponsor. And if you want to see more. And that's it for today. I'll see you soon in the next update and video. And I hope you're having a great, super awesome time with your own self and your self-mastery. It's time to really own our mastery. I was shown this through spirit that it's really now time. And this will mean developing the right rituals. It's not like a ritual that you need an intermediary, but these practices with the breath, with the body, with understanding yourself on a much bigger level, this takes commitment, and it's really time. So great work at devoting to yourself, and I'll see you soon. So take care. Bye-bye.